Welcome to the Wednesday, July 12, 2017 Planning Board meeting of the Town of Raymond. Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum. We have roll call, please.
Sheila Burke.
Greg Foster.
Bruce Sanford.
Ed Kranich.
Kyle Bancroft.
Danielle Stumper.
This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are being presented. Please notify the chairman if you are unable to hear or to see. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. Consideration of minutes from the meeting of June 14th, 2017. Election of officers. Old business, application final plan review for high wire hydroponics. New business, application public hearing. It's the private way extension with the applicant Casey Steinlosk. Planner communications and adjournment. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances. After the board votes on the merits of each project application, it will prepare a written notice of decision. Generally speaking, appeals must be filed with the Superior Court within 30 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that this board's record evidences your participation this evening. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand, state their name, address, and affiliation with the project, if any. You must sign the sign-in sheet if you are speaking tonight. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. We'd also ask that anybody speaking, except the engineer presenting plans up front, use the microphone in the stand and back, and the engineer does have a microphone to use while he makes his presentation on his plans. First order of business is a consideration of the minutes from June 14th, 2017.
I move we approve the minutes of June 14th as presented. I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? I'll abstain. I was not here at that meeting, so we have a 6-0 and 1 for approval of the minutes. Next is election of officers. Open the floor for any comments, discussions, motions that anybody wants to entertain.
Move the slate of Bruce Sanford for chairman and my buddy over here, Greg Foster, as vice chairman.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have any discussion, other nominations? Well, call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's done. Old business, application final plan review for high wire hydroponics. I was not at the June 14th meeting. I was at the initial presentation. Greg, how do you feel about taking the gavel for, you were here last meeting, and although I have read all of Jim's notes and the final, the final notes of the application, but perhaps it would be more appropriate for you to take over since I missed the last meeting and you may be a little bit more up to speed on it than I am.
I don't know about that. I can try, I guess. I'll need Chris's help.
I'll do what I can, Greg.
I think Mr. Chairman, where we left it was we provided a number of items to high wire hydroponics, and they've returned a response with additional plans. So what I would suggest we do is just one by one go through those items that we were looking for to ensure, and to make it even easier, what I would also suggest, Mr. Chairman, is we just let our engineer take us issue by issue through the list.
Since Jim
which,
was not here tonight.
yeah, and I've got to also compliment high wire hydroponics in being so thorough in their response. So if you would like to take the podium and lead us through the revisions in your memorandum, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you.
we live? Wait a minute, wait a minute.
You're good.
Are we good? Good evening. Rick Light with Light Environmental Design. With the chair. Oops. Are we on?
Live? Okay. Tonight, and I've got the representatives from Highwire here to answer any specific questions. What I thought I would do, and I think it's a good suggestion, is in a brief summary, is that from the last meeting, we walked away with a number of good suggestions by the planning board and by staff, Jim Seymour's memo. And we went back, and I believe, and I hope we've addressed all of them. If we've missed any, we can certainly discuss those tonight. But I'll walk down through the changes that we've made to the plans, and then, if need be, walk through. There were a number of conditions that the board had suggested we add as notes to the plans, and so I'd like to at least sort of summarize or go through those individually. The first on the drawings, I'm going to refer to this site plan, and as I need to, I'll flip through some other site plans if I need to point out items. But item number 1 was the zoning. And the zoning line is shown on the updated plan. The 1,000-foot line that Chris had mentioned for the industrial zone comes right back into this area just beyond the property line here, is measured from the edge of the right-of-way. And so we've added that to the drawings. And number 2 is that what that does is there was a discussion briefly at the board about the buffer, which is item number 2, along the buffer that's required under section whatever, 4G8, I think it is, under the industrial zoning. I'm just sort of going from memory. And that buffer is required between an industrial use or commercial use and a residential within a district line. And what we had suggested, and I'm actually going to ask for a consideration for a change of what I've already submitted tonight. What we had put on the plans was to extend a 40-foot buffer along the whole length of the property line, essentially, and then add a 10-foot covenanted area, not shown on here, on the inside. So the total is 50 feet. And that would be a limited cut, disturbance buffer, et cetera. And, however, I'd like to propose something slightly different than what's shown on the plans tonight, and I'll explain why. And I sent a note over to Jim and to Chris Hansen, and Jim came back with a suggestion, is that the lot is such an odd shape here, sort of a fishtail. And under the ordinance, it talks about buffering the use. And our thinking is that the basic use of the property is from about here to here. And it wouldn't really matter one way or the other. The applicants own the adjacent property, but they're thinking of doing something over there with the property and in the future. And so we got looking at it, and one of the best in the future, we're not talking about it now, but if we were to access that property, probably the best spot to access it is right in through here. So if we had a buffer, it would really restrict the use of that property, even though we haven't planned anything there yet. So what we would like to do is propose that we extend the buffer to a point shown at about right here, and Jim had sent a sketch over that sort of suggested this, and then we have 50 feet coming back into the site and add some trees in there, so that we've met the intent of the ordinance, that we buffered the industrial commercial use, met the specific criteria of the ordinance, but left, it's about 100 feet or so of just, by virtue of it being a very small fishtail here, it's really not part of the property, but it's just part of the lot. So if the board is agreeable to that, we would submit a final condition plan showing that.
Quick question, is that new proposed line the property line or the edge of the industrial zone, or what?
I'm sorry, I should pull up the new plans and flip through them.
I see the line, it's shown on sheet 2.1.
Yes.
But it's not really identified. I suspect it's a property line.
The zoning line comes, as we scale it through the chair, comes right up through this area right here. So when if you take that and go back 50 feet into the lot, this is the 50-foot setback from the industrial zone line, the industrial residential zone line. So in other words, a portion of this remaining part of the property is all in residential right now, and then from this part forward is industrial. This whole lot across the street, not being considered now, but for future development, is in the industrial zone. If that answers your
You're
question.
really proposing just to take the buffer to the edge of the industrial zone
Yes.
at that
Yeah,
property?
and come in from there, yes. Okay. The second item that was discussed was a waiver of the access width, and we had reduced on the plans, reduced the throat here upon suggestion from the planning board and for Jim Seymour to sort of close up this gap here. And we've made this a 70-foot wide width, and I believe the board acknowledged that at the last meeting, and this would be grassed, buffer through here. So that closes this whole throat up on this part of the property.
And
That
does not require a waiver?
does not require a waiver at this point, thank you.
That's the small island that's noted in the, originally you wanted 110 feet.
Yes,
Narrowed to
yes.
70, and that's the small island
Yes.
that's noted in that paragraph.
Yes.
Okay.
And so at the last meeting, for the chair's edification, we had proposed a waiver of that, but in retrospect, dealing with the board and with Jim, we agreed that this would be suitable and it wouldn't require a waiver by doing that. So we're fully acceptable in the plan. The updated plans do reflect that.
Would it be a landscape buffer or not?
Yes, this would be a grass or landscape island in here, so that the roadway is expected to end here, the improved portion then that goes into a gravel road, the rest of the way out to a drive up to this residence back up in
Would it
here.
have curbs on it, or is it just basically
No,
meet the
no,
road?
no curbs in here. Only place we have curbs, the chair, is this area up and through here, and then this area down through here.
Okay.
The third item was the propane tank area. It was suggested by the town, by Jim, the town planner, that we add a path, which we did, to drag a hose to the propane tank and to put some bollards or stones, and we proposed several boulders in there to protect the septic system, which would go in that area, the septic tank. The fifth item on this list is the drainage. We had talked to the town planner, or with Jim about that, and his suggestion was to try to capture some of the water. There's a high point of the grading here, and the water drains this way and this way. And although we all, as engineers, want to put things in water into sheet flow, which is the best thing for you, and then into our filter bed, he felt that there might be some water coming around this corner here that might begin to erode this area. So what we did in response to his comment is we put some curbing in through here, along this edge and through here, and there's curbing on the front face too as you come into the building, and added a catch basin so the water would enter the catch basin. We already have a pipe system across here. We shifted it. So there's a catch basin here collecting road water. There's another structure here, and that all discharges in the same location. So
The new one's catch basin 3, correct?
yes, exactly, and we've addressed that. That's per the Jim's comments, and so I believe we've addressed that comment. Item number 6 was lighting. In your packet, we added 2 light fixtures at each corner of the parking lot here. These are LED cutoff fixtures. They're consistent with the same model that were being used on the building, and lighting cuts were included in your packet, the Spalding fixtures. And the last was landscaping. I think we were certainly in agreement, if I understood the board, that rather than go to a full landscape plan, that if we use this general concept and worked it out with the planner and with Scott, or with Chris, that would be acceptable. So as part of our record, we included a reduced copy of this in your packet, if that's suitable, and that when they go to landscape the property, and since they're in the landscape business, they would come up with a plan that's suitable to Chris and Jim and implement that, if the board's acceptable to that. So we've included a reduced copy of this as a point of record. Okay. Are there any comments on those items, or have we missed anything else that the board had on their checklist?
No.
No.
Yes.
One question I have is paragraph K, other consideration on Article 9, or Article 9 standard. The last italicized comment from Jim says, to date, we have not witnessed any draft or legal documents suggesting the easements have been secured, for the relocation of Murray Drive and the, the rights-of-way extension on either side, or that they have acquired the necessary right, title or interest to alter the lands and right-of-way easements. The planning board shall discuss the situation. What do you have on that?
Mr. Chairman, what we did is we've been working with Braun and Wilson, with Jeffrey Wilson, the attorney for the applicant. And at this point, I think the board, if I don't want to paraphrase what the board's intent is, but our thought was that it would be a condition of approval. But what we've done at this point is there's been a meeting with the owners of Murray Drive, and there are draft documents which we weren't able to get in the packet earlier, but we have draft documents I have in my hand, and we submitted a copy to Chris and Jim just a day or two ago. The intent is to, for edification, was to, in this plan, I apologize, it doesn't show real well, but we had a colored version. This has been updated slightly, but there are a number of small easements that would have to transpire between parties, shifting of the right-of-way in through here from the current right-of-way, and then granting of rights within those easements for access and utilities. And at this point, all the current property owners have acquiesced, at least in principle. And so the attorneys have drafted up an association, articles of association documents, and we put in, we submitted a draft copy for the introduction of an association meeting, in which time they would all, get together and sign the association documents. And then easements, there's a draft sort of easement that was provided to the board as a sample that would be provided to each party to transfer the necessary easements. That would all go in concert with this plan, and to the board's request, we made this plan into a recordable plan. It has the recording information, planning board signature block. The board would sign this plan, which references all the other drawings, and then that would correlate with each of the easements when they're all executed. Yeah. So that is in motion, and the idea of setting up and establishing an association is in motion.
Right, and I think that the key issue for the board is it's a condition of approval, that association document be executed.
Correct.
Prior to the issuance of a building
Right,
permit.
right, before they get the
Building,
final,
okay.
go-ahead, so.
Rick, do you have any comments on the proposed schedule for shimming, grading, paving, striping, final paving, et cetera, that's on page 6 of Jim's document?
Yes, I believe, and I'm going to have to refer to my specific notes, but I'll try to paraphrase. I think we put together a note on the plan based on our discussion with the board that would phase in the construction such that the initial road would be widened. We've got ditch work to do. There's improved drainage up here. That work be done prior to issuance. I'm going to sort of reach out here. Is it issuance of the occupancy permit, building occupancy permit, and then within 1 year the occupancy permit that would be paved. And I believe that's what our note says. And if anyone disagrees with me, I'd have to read it.
Yeah, and then there was a timeline after the base paving had been through one winter.
One winter.
That by June 1st of the following year, that they get the final coat of pavement.
Yeah.
Right. And,
So I think Jim pushed up your schedule a little bit in his
Okay.
memo. That's in what you have
right, it's-
received.
If you look at the plan notes in our memorandum, all of these items, if we want to add clarification to,
Oh, it is, okay.
see all the items there, including
Yeah,
the road
number 8.
association one, yeah, that
Okay.
we just talked about.
Mhm.
So,
Excellent.
and what we're doing is by having contingency on building permit and occupancy permit, that those schedules need to be, and we're delegating that to staff to
To
ensure
enforce that.
that they can enforce it based on those two things. Does that? So, without a magnifying glass, I couldn't read that, but I'm assuming that's what it says up there.
They wanted small amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, who wanted the small one?
That's the problem. We have a full-size set of plans. We can't unroll anything, and a half-size, you can't read it.
Mary, you have to bring your magnifying glass from now on. That's just a new piece of equipment.
Well, my apologies. What I've done in the past, and I should have done, I wasn't thinking, is I usually submit like an 8.5 by 11
Note.
of just the notes so you can read through them at a reasonable scale. My apologies. I'll think of that next time. So if you want, I can go through the plan notes that have been added and make sure that we've addressed all the comments, and I'll do these sort of in a general and a
I
specific.
think the only thing the board would need to adjust, Mr. Chairman, would be clarification on that 50-foot buffer. I want to make sure that it's clearly somewhere that we've agreed to this cut. If there's no objection by the board to that, I think it's more than a fair interpretation of the statute, that it's a 50-foot buffer behind the actual use of the commercial industrial space.
So staff would recommend that that get put on the Mylar. Before you sign the Mylar, the staff will review it to make sure that
Yeah.
it's what we discussed.
That would be technically the only change, and I think as time marches on, we want to make sure that if the day comes you're using that area, there's no misunderstanding that we approve to leave that open.
Can you flip that page back so we can look at that?
So Sheila, that buffered area will need to be are on the recorded plan that's at the registry, so that is in perpetuity the
Okay.
buffer.
Correct.
Just don't want it to get,
I'm sorry, through the chair, this would be the recordable plan that would be added to this plan here.
okay.
So that before you sign that, we'll make sure that the buffer's on there.
Does that, Bruce, does that make sense, what I just?
Yeah,
what you just
I
said?
think if we're going to be going for final approval tonight after board discussion, we probably want to make that a condition of approval. That it just be, so drawn on the recordable plan.
And also have a written description. Usually we do the meets and bounds of the
Taking it to
buffer.
the left property line and the
Right,
end of the
so we have a
industrial
deed
zone.
res-
A
Right.
legal
A legal
description of the buffer.
correct.
And it'd be two pieces. There'd be a legal description of this easement here on this lot,
Correct.
and then one of a 10-foot or of a covenant on this lot with this, I guess we'd probably call it a covenant on that
So
lot.
that it equals the
Because you can't
50-foot
give an easement
intended
yourself,
buffer.
So it'd be a covenant within the deed.
Because I think if you had the 50 feet on your property, you would have used it all on your.
Right.
But technically, they own both parcels, but,
Yeah, we can provide that.
right.
Yep.
Okay. Any further comments or questions from the board?
I have no more. Anyone else?
Good.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Jim advises us that we should go through Articles 9 and 10 of the minimum standards and site plan review.
Mr. Chair, we did that at the last meeting.
Oh, you did?
Yes, we went through all, and that's where all of this stuff arose from.
Okay,
So I think just ensuring that each of those items was covered and documented on the plan, with the one change that Chris will ensure, and our legal description, I think we're ready to move to final approval by the plan board.
Correct.
What additional discussion do members have regarding what we've heard so far and
I don't think there was anything else. I think everything was addressed in the final presentation.
As I say, I appreciate it was very well organized.
Well, the only condition apparently, if I'm hearing correctly, are that the draft or legal documents, that the easements have been secured, that language will be added to the plan.
Correct.
And that the 50-foot buffer drawing portion will be amended. And unless I'm incorrect, those are the only two additional conditions we have that we're
Correct.
that we're
And
considering.
there are more clarifications, though there was a change, but it really is more clarification than a condition, in my opinion, but
Mhm.
yes, that's it.
Mhm.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve the high-wire hydroponics facility expansion with the noted additional conditions
And clarify.
of, and clarification of the buffer change.
Also, the draft and legal documents that the easements have been secured. That- I think
That's
that-
already on the plan.
Part of that.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's
all
already
right.
up here,
Okay.
required road maintenance agreement
With the
Okay.
waiver request,
with the waiver request, yes.
correct?
You have to give us a formal waiver request. That way, everybody's covered for this change. It's an interpretation the board is willing to make, or, if we're willing to make that interpretation, why?
Well, I believe you granted the waiver
Yes.
at the last meeting. I just think you need to mention it in your
Nope.
motion.
Okay.
I'm
And
sorry,
you
through
did.
the chair, through the chair, we're talking about the entrance, the 70-foot entrance width, is that what we're talking about?
Talking about the shoulder widths from 5
Yeah.
feet to 2 feet.
Oh, the shoulder width, and that was, I believe, granted at the last
It was June
meeting and
14th.
added to the plan as a formal waiver. It's
Correct.
on the plan.
So
But
it's on-
we haven't technically voted that as part of the formal approval, the waiver itself.
So we need to consider the waiver separately. and
I think
vote
you
on
can
that.
include, I think you can include it in the motion.
All in the same
And the
motion.
motion that,
Okay. all
Mary,
right.
would you read back the motion as it stands for me, please?
Move to approve with noted additional conditions and clarification of buffer changes, and that's as far as we've got.
Buffer changes, the addition of legal description of the buffer, and a formal written waiver request. And that covers all three, and I already moved that we approve, so. Does that work? So I've got all three in one
Because you already
motion.
have the waiver request,
We
correct?
already had the waiver letter.
Oh, we have the waiver letter.
Okay.
Been approved. I just,
And the approval of, let me take it all back. I'm gonna start again. I try to get out of it, but I can't. I move we provide final approval to high wire hydroponics facility expansion and the requested waiver on file with the additional conditions of
And clarifications.
additional conditions and clarifications of the buffer with a legal description of such buffer.
Agreed.
I think that hits it.
I do.
I think you got it.
And I second that.
And Patricia seconds it.
We have
Since
board
she helped me write it
discussion.
over here.
Any board discussion on that?
No.
Ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is passed, and the
And you're off to the
application's
races.
been approved.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing it.
Next order of business is a new application. Wait, I'm looking at the minutes, never mind.
Correct. Hearing?
It is a
wanna
new
make
business
sure that-
application.
Do you have a copy of Jim's memo? The first one? This one, July 12th. I'm going to give you a copy. Just make sure that your notes on the timing of the coincide with that. I think this is, here's one. Okay, you got it.
Thanks, Rick, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a new business application. It is a public hearing. It is for a private way extension. The applicant is Casey Steinlosk. And we have the memorandum from Jim Seymour. I'm not sure whether I want to walk through this right now or give Mr. Steinlosk an opportunity to present his
I would suggest that we give Mr. Steinloff a chance to present his proposal, then conduct the public hearing, and then go to board discussion.
Are you Mr. Steinlosk?
I'm Wayne Wood, the surveyor representing him.
Oh, okay, you're his representative. All right. Why don't you present the project to us and give us an understanding of what you are proposing to do?
Sure. Once again, I'm Wayne Wood, the surveyor for the Steinlofts. They have this property that's located off of Route 85 at the end of Nicholas Drive currently. It consists of the area to the rear here that's highlighted in bold lines. Cassie Steinloff's mother is Jody Grover, who is the listed owner of the lot in front. There is also a house that sits on the very front of the road that is the owner of this entire piece to the northeast. What they're proposing to do is they've got, I guess it's medical issues with a child that they need to get some money to pay for. Their process to do that is to see if they can develop a couple of lots out here. They've got an interested party that is interested in buying the first 2 lots that can be sold outside of subdivision. She'll then hold the remaining land till a later date. If they choose to do anything at a later date, they would then move the turnaround that's been proposed as being temporarily here to the end for that. At this stage, they're looking for the private way approval to allow that to take place. Now, we've got on the map, we've shown the layout that we're proposing to come in off of the existing road that comes into this turnaround here, which I'm not sure the turnaround ever got built on the original version. We have an easement located in this area on this small triangle over her mother's land that she's willing to grant so that we can then achieve the necessary turning radiuses for the emergency vehicles, et cetera, to make a swing and come out into the rest of this right of way. In a nutshell, that's what we've proposed to do. we'd certainly like to entertain any comments or questions and see if we can move this thing along.
Where specifically is the end of the existing
The,
private road on the plan? Is there a station number that the end of the road exists to, or?
you're gonna make me try and read over that, aren't you? I'm gonna have to back this up just a little bit so I can get in there. I'll agree with you on the size of some of the print. My guess, the existing road is built to somewhere near the Station 3. The houses that are there are located at the, what I said, at the front, and then the other one is right in here. The driveway comes into that at Station 2-ish, so it's constructed to that stage right there.
Okay, so roughly 200 feet in from Route 85.
Yeah, 200, 250, something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Has our code enforcement officer and town planner shared with you all of the questions that they have about this particular project at this point?
And I sat down with both Chris and Jim and had a discussion on this, and I think we got to the bottom of most of it.
Because, quite honestly, based on their technical review, there's a number of items that need to be addressed. And Mr. Chairman, I would suppose that this application is not complete at this time. I think we should entertain public comments and then have the board provide additional comments to the applicant so that we can reconsider this in August, if you would see that as appropriate.
I do. I did read through Jim's memorandum, and I agree there are just a number of things that he notes as having needed to be added or changed to the plan. So I agree that it's not a complete application at this point.
Right. So I would propose that we open it for any public comments, because this is a public hearing, to see if anybody's here that would like to say anything to that regard, and then close that section, and then perhaps then open it up for additional board comment.
I think that makes sense. At this point, we will open it for a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to ask questions or address the situation, please step up to the microphone in the stand and introduce yourself, name, address, and town of residence, and your interest in the project, and then tell us what you think.
Yes, my name's Michael Wood. I live at 67 AI Road in Raymond. I'm the abutting property owner to the back of this proposed project, right there.
Can you show us which is your property on the plan here?
Right here.
Okay, on the end, uh-huh.
Yep, Michael and Pamela Wood. We own that abutting property to this here. Questions I have is, they want to build 2 houses here now, and possibly a third on a gifted lot, correct?
Correct.
All right. What type of houses are going to go in there? Are there any trailers going to go in there?
I am not sure what the zoning is per se there. I think that trailers, is this it's a straight residential district, Chris?
I believe that's rural residential,
Uh-huh,
which does allow mobile homes
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
or manufactured homes.
all right. There's a brook and wetlands back here. How is that going to be affected?
I believe that that is mentioned in Jim's memorandum
Okay.
as an issue that does need to be considered. I believe his memorandum calls out the fact that there are wetlands along the far western edge, and that's one of the things that needs to be considered by the applicant.
Yeah.
All right, my final question is, how long of an extension of Nicholas Drive are they asking for?
Well, without scaling the whole thing, apparently the existing drive comes in about 200 feet off of Route 85.
feet? Yeah,
I
you
mean,
just told me 1,000 feet.
2, 3,
Almost
in the
1,200.
neighborhood of 800 additional
800.
feet, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going from 250 to 1400.
Mhm.
1,200.
Okay.
1,200 feet?
Yeah. Okay.
That's extended my question for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience have questions or wish to speak? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and we will return to board deliberations. I think we probably should walk through Jim's memorandum and make a note of all the things in it.
Are you, sir, are you prepared to take all these comments?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Take the comments from you. In fact, that's what I'm hoping we can do, so that we can
Okay.
address this and get it complete for you for the next meeting.
Okay.
Sheila, you seem to have done quite a job of coloring everything up, and do you want to take the
Sure.
lead here
Do you
on
want me to
this?
go through some of the staff comments before you go? or-
Okay.
I mean, that's
What?
up to you, Sheila.
No, why don't you go ahead, Chris, and
Okay,
I'll back you up as we go.
We did, Jim and I did meet on this. One of the issues that we had is this extension, first of all, let me clarify that Nichols Drive, it does show a hammerhead on the plan that it was never built. So we've got two houses built. There is no turnaround built for those two lots that are back lots.
That's roughly at
That's-
Station 3.
That's roughly at Station 3.
The only one's the back lot.
So what they've done is they've reconfigured the right-of-way to allow a curve that will meet our road standards. But one of the issues is, I don't know if Wayne is aware that our ordinance requires for road extensions of up to 4 or up to 10 require a 16-foot road width, not a 12-foot road width, with
3-foot shoulders.
3-foot shoulders. What is on the plan on page 2 is
16 and 1.
12-foot with 1-foot shoulders, and he's also mislabeled it Fry Road Extension rather than
That I fixed.
that. I haven't seen that, but that would need to be corrected.
So in that particular case, if you were to try to stick with that, we would need a formal waiver request from our
Correct.
road standards.
Correct,
And-
and I was, in part of the discussions that had been had over time with staff, it indicated to my client that a 16-foot wide road was sufficient, but I questioned that myself and said, okay, that's not what I'm reading it to be, but
We'd have to
So-
ask for a waiver.
We'd have to ask for a waiver.
The other piece of while we're talking about the existing section, we would need some confirmation that that met our road standards for thickness of materials, depth, shoulder.
Because my understanding, sir, is once you open it, you open the whole thing now becomes under consideration as a private road extension, and that includes the old portion. So
Sure.
what we're being advised is that we need to get the information on that existing road to make sure that it meets our standards. So that would include cross-sections, we need to know what's under there, all that kind of stuff, correct, Chris?
Correct. And I would recommend possibly that the board do a site walk.
Yeah.
my suggestion for your determining what's there is, if this gets to an approval stage, is that when we get ready to do construction and have the equipment sitting there, we can dig into the road and determine what's there with inspections from staff and deal with whatever we need to add to it to make it work.
Well, I think
I
what
mean-
we're saying is that we would be entertaining a condition for approval that you would agree to take the existing section of
Sure.
Nichols Road up to standard. I think that would be perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
in
just want to
agreement
be
with that.
clear that not only the typical Fry Road extension note is wrong, but that according to Jim's notes, he would want to see a total width of 20 feet with 2-foot shoulders on each side, which would lead to a 16-foot wide actual roadway travel.
That's what he's recommending.
Right,
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
okay.
I don't think the board is going to be, I can't speak for the board, but my own feeling, I don't think that we're probably going to consider a waiver of that 20-foot total width.
But it would require a waiver to get to your 20-foot total width that
Correct.
we're talking about.
Correct.
Right.
So,
Right. But
That's
narrowing
kinda what
it
I'm looking
further,
for.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
If, as long as the 20-foot sounds like something everybody's in agreement with, then we'll work with that, see, 20-foot total.
Okay.
And then we're at item 3. The applicant needs to address the engineering requirements for culvert placement and stormwater management, a surface grading plan, culvert placements. The applicant has not provided any engineering of the sizing or details of the level lip spreaders and potential location of the culverts. So we need some design work done.
And apparently he indicates that he intends to use the point system for phosphorus export treatment.
Which is fine, he just needs to list it out and itemize how he's doing that.
Right.
But the surface grading plan, how the water's gonna get to these level lip spreaders and where the culverts are placed and sized, how that's all, that needs to be engineered.
Right. The other issue for me as a planning board member is the intent in here, if I read it correctly, was to exclude from that erosion control and phosphorus management the existing section of road. I can speak for myself at this point to the board. I'm not inclined to grant that. I do feel that when we have an opportunity to ensure solid water quality within the town of Raymond, we should take every due opportunity we have to do that. And if I understand from looking at the plans, this ultimately drains not only into wetlands, which need to be marked, but into the Panther Pond watershed. Am I correct with that? Correct. So I'm only speaking for myself at this point, but you know, I would not be inclined to vote for exclusion of the existing Nichols Drive from the overall plan in terms of erosion and phosphorus control.
I don't think I portrayed that through to Jim in any way, shape, or form, that we were
Okay.
trying to exclude that from any of those
Okay.
issues, but
A question-
so noted.
The question I have there is this curve that's shown to Station 3, Chris, is that curve for the line of sight from the road, is that curve already there? Or is that curve needs to be created at the end of the existing?
That would need to be created.
I fully agree with Sheila then, because now we're going in and we're ripping up part of the existing road and altering its location, and I don't think you're gonna get a waiver on the existing driveway as far as phosphorus treatment and export considerations.
So Chris, you want to keep leading us through the
Yeah, and then we
staff?
get to Jim's part 4 of his memo, which addresses I, J, and K, would be to address the drainage, an erosion control plan, phosphorus control plan, and any waivers necessary for any standards that can't be met. A private road agreement, homeowners association.
Already in the works.
Okay. And then just to continue on, request notes that the site distance meets road safety entrance.
We'll add that to the plan. I don't-
Add that to
you
the
know,
plan.
Yeah.
Yep, those things are all easy to provide, and we'll put them on the plan for you.
And then either statement of, from an engineer or a site visit that we do some excavation in the existing road to show that adequate material was used to meet the town private street standard.
Yeah. And I think we talked about that earlier.
Right,
that
once again, we're willing to
to
make
make
that
it
a
a
condition.
condition.
It being brought up to that standard, yes.
Yeah, that we dig that up at the same time, and he's willing to bring it to standard.
Sure.
Okay.
And lastly, submission requirements of Article 10D submission. Item 7, location of watercourses, rock outcroppings, or wetlands. Item 9, any mains, wells, hydrants, culverts, and drains within 200 feet of the property. We may want to see the existing house locations and driveway locations, and if you can, propose driveway locations for the future homes. I know you've got
Sure.
a building envelope, but we really don't know how these lots are going to be affected. Any existing soils data, stormwater management plan, we've already gone through that. And when we get to actually approving this, we'll have to talk about a performance guarantee to ensure that they have the funds to get this project complete, a letter of credit.
Chris, where would you want to insert the request to show driveway locations as an item number?
Right where, I would say where we're doing location of water courses, outcroppings, item 7,
Comma,
or item 9, either one.
location of main.
Probably more appropriate in 9.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so we'll add, and locations of proposed driveways at the
Now,
3 back lots.
This within 200 feet of the property or 200 feet of the road that we're proposing to develop?
What I think we're suggesting is on the 2 new
Sure.
lots that are ready, you're
That
getting
one I
ready to
get.
go, we'd like to see,
I'm just
Proposed
thinking in
driveways.
terms of, within 200 feet of the property, this guy's driveway is within 200 feet of the property, but is that really what you're looking for? I don't think so. I think it's of the road that we're proposing, correct?
Correct.
The proposed road.
Gotcha.
One of his notes was, there should be a note of how the stumpages will be handled, if it's gonna be buried on site, or if it's gonna be removed by a contractor.
We'll add that note to the plan.
Okay.
That's an easy one, too.
And we can get you a copy of Jim's memo, which I don't know if you received that yet.
I got it yesterday.
Okay.
okay. So everything we're talking about is pretty well covered there by section.
That's why we're not,
by-
I mean,
yeah.
we haven't had a chance to address
Sure,
any
sure.
of it in any depth yet because we just barely got
And in
it.
fairness to the applicant, he was under a very small timeline to get us materials. So he
Well
he got
appreciated.
what he could get, and
Sure.
then he'll provide the rest.
And I did hand to Chris this evening, I did finally get the actual test pit logs to go with the test pits that we showed.
Okay,
A note on that, typically we require 2 test pits for new lots. That's in our ordinance. We may want to just waive that, and I can have the second test pits before I issue a subsurface
Sure.
or septic design.
so we will, but prior to building and all of that, right, Chris?
Correct.
So
Yep.
I guess where we're
Well,
at,
if we've got
Mr.
a-
Chairman, is that
We got time
I
to do it
think
anyway.
we understand each other about all the information that needs to be pulled together for our next meeting.
Sure.
And you certainly can work with Jim or Chris if you have additional questions. But once we have all of those materials, we'll decide on waivers and conditions for the plan, and we can go from there.
The other thing the board may want to discuss is timing of a site walk.
Sidewalk, right?
Yes.
Right. Weekends usually seem to work best for most people. Does anybody have any,
We have done site walks in the evening where it does stay light now until 9 o'clock.
The other thing is, we have our August meeting coming up, and doesn't he need to have all of his documents in within, was it 14 calendar days before the next meeting, or?
He needs to have everything to us for the August 9th meeting by July 12th.
Well, okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's go to September then.
So that
So
would
I
be,
guess we're looking at September.
we're looking at September, so August 16th would be
Okay.
the deadline.
This coming weekend is not a good weekend for me personally. I'm winding up baseball umpiring on state tournaments and stuff, but,
No, the next weekend is out for me. It's Everybody Loves Raymond, and I'm going to be very busy.
Well, how about one of these evening ones?
Evenings work better for me.
Yeah, one of these evenings,
That'd
because
be-
it does stay late.
After, you know, after 5 o'clock,
It
6
stays
o'clock.
late.
or
Fine for me.
How about next Monday, which would
What's
be
the
the 17th?
That's correct.
As far as I know.
Say at 6:30, that'll give people time to get home from work and,
I think that sounds fine, yeah. Monday, 6:30 PM, and that is July
and
17th.
we would meet at the site
Meet
location,
at the
is that
site.
correct?
It probably wouldn't take us a half hour. It's not a long walk.
Okay.
It's all downhill.
Now, you know,
It's coming
Well,
back.
one
You gotta come back uphill to get to the car.
has the proposed road been flagged or anything at this point, or?
What do you want, miracles?
How long have you had this
I mean,
job?
the point of the site walk is probably to look at the existing conditions of the road and the site
Mhm,
distance, that type of thing.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys want to take a general walk down through where,
We can flag up whatever you need.
I would like to walk back down, and I want to see where the wetlands are, and just, I've got some questions about that. Mary, would you be kind enough to put together some type of an email memo and send all that out to us so we can put on our Outlook calendars and, you know, et cetera, about the site walk time?
But we'll have a general sense as to where the road's gonna be.
he'll put some flags up with a general
That'd be
location.
great.
It won't be 100% accurate, but just with a compass he can show us.
Make sure you have your bug spray, that's all. I
And the
ask.
public is welcome to attend that.
Okay.
Sending out notices for the sidewalk.
You won't have time. The abutters have already been noticed. If the public has interest in walking with us, they're welcome to join us. We don't discuss items on site, we just observe.
I have an additional question on the proposed driveway upgrade easement. What is that? Is that just to
that
pave an
triangle area?
so they can make that corner
Yes.
for the emergency vehicles?
It's a
It
change.
doesn't currently exist for them to do that, but
Oh,
Jody Grover is the mother, and she's willing to grant that easement over her property so that we would have the right title and interest to be able to build the road where we want to build it. To meet
Yeah,
that
the
curve.
reason that they had to do that was the way the original right-of-way was laid out, and then the new right-of-way, they were kind of overlapped, and they would have had to make a hard right-hand turn and a left-hand turn, and they never could have made the radiuses. So they changed the right-of-way with the permission of her, Ms. Steinlock's mother, will allow them to draw the road so that it'll meet the curvature requirements. Otherwise, it would just been a hard two 90-degree turn.
And the fire department says.
They never
that
would have made it through there.
Even though we don't have a terminus, their hoses can reach to the end of this road, so
Well, there will be a terminus once this is designed.
once we get to the very end.
Correct.
is there a temporary one?
Yeah, I think there's a temporary one for the first two lots,
Yeah.
and then a final one after they gift the other lot,
Right,
if they decide to do
if we
that.
decide to do
So you will have a turnaround built out of this scenario, period.
that. The fire department got up my driveway. I just stood in amazement when they brought that big truck up my driveway.
We have other discussion by the board at this time? I want to consider a motion to table this application as incomplete.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor? Opposed? All right, we will be at the site walk on Monday, July 17th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next order of business is planner communications.
Well, Jim's not here.
So I guess we can't do
And
that.
the Zephyr Associates application, which is an addition to Raymond Ready Care, is being done as a staff review. We're still waiting for a few more materials before we can report to the board on how staff found on that.
Okay.
They're 90% there, there's just a couple of things we need, and Jim and I will review that, and at the next board meeting, we'll give you.
So you expect that may be forthcoming for
It
August?
won't be on your agenda, it'll just be a communication. It's
Okay.
a staff review.
Okay. Any other items that anybody wants to bring up tonight?
I'd like to welcome our new planning
Yes.
board member.
Danielle, your name's Danielle, correct?
It is.
Hi.
Sorry, I was tardy to my first meeting.
No, you weren't. You were right on time. We had a minute warning. You sat in your seat. We're good.
You gotta get you a nameplate and,
It's already ordered.
All of us have been late around once.
We've made phone calls and woken people up, if I remember correctly.
oh, yeah, I'm famous for that.
I think that's it, sir.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Second? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.